One of NFL free agency, and it feels more like the NBA trade deadline or maybe the MLB trade deadline. Things are happening today. This is Pass the Rock.
One of y'all pass the gosh darn rock? Hey yo, I'm trying, I ain't lying, and hosting this will be Brian.
Yeah.
Posting like Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
flying to see the pie.
Yeah.
Hit the hezzy, we got Jesse, opinions get kinda messy. A fan of out of lefties, from football to racing jet skis. He go silly when he go deep, sheesh, is Zach Zeman. Teaming up with Jack, we stack the whole team, man. Pass the rock, don't stop the shot clock.
Woo.
Smack the slap shot, come on, now let's talk. Pass the, yo partner, pass the rock, for real.
All right, Jack, I need you to watch Twitter because we are definitely going to use our situation where we have breaking news today. I just have a feeling every 12 minutes we're going to have a new signing. Have you ever seen it this active day one?
Oh, this is insane. I don't remember actually at any point in my life seeing NFL free agency like this on day one. We knew it was going to be a somewhat strong free agency class this year, so the big names were bound to get moved, but just the frenzy that we've seen on day one today has been so entertaining. So I've had a lot of fun today. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, and we're going to rank the moves and grade them and all that later. But Jesse, no more Mac Jones for the Patriots.
I'm so excited to finally get the actual pretty much guarantee that we'll be taking a quarterback on day one of the draft. It's, as our good friend Jerry Thornton says, the best Jaden Daniels or Drake May available will be a New England Patriot. So whichever one, I'm hoping it's Jaden Daniels personally, but I'm just glad that Mac Jones is officially out of the building, out of the state of Boston, nowhere near Foxborough at all. I couldn't be happier.
Oh, I love.
He couldn't be more south, so I'm glad about that.
The glorious state of Boston.
No, I mean, well, I think there was a little bit of error with. They're not going to get the best. They're going to get whatever's left over of those two. Yeah. Hopefully for them, it's the best one, but we'll see how that goes. All right, let's start at the top. Best move of the day, Jack.
Honestly, I think the most impactful move of the day was Christian Wilkins signing with the Raiders. I think that does absolute wonders for that defense. The duo of Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby is, to be quite frank, terrifying for opposing defenses. That's going to be absolutely menacing, and it feeds into the Raiders' identity that they've been trying to breed this offseason. You retain Antonio Pierce. You try to build up on that defense that played surprisingly well that last year. That is going to be the identity of the Raiders moving forward, and being willing to go out and give a massive deal to probably the best pass rusher on the entire, even though it's not an edge rusher. Christian Wilkins is a game wrecker in the pass rushing game as well as in run defense. Absolute stud on the defensive line for the Raiders. It's an identity piece. It's going to make that defense a lot better. And if I were a Raider fan, I would be over the moon with that signing.
I agree. I think I think that is the move of the day so far. I think that makes the Raiders pass rush just, I mean, if they could get any more formidable. And now you figure out something at quarterback and you got a chance here. So, I really love that move. Jesse, what's your biggest move of the day?
My favorite move of the day is Geno Stone to the division rival Cincinnati Bengals. Geno Stone, by the way, was second in interceptions last year in the NFL with 7. Only second to Deron Bland, of course, who broke the record for most pick sixes. So Geno Stone, as a safety, is right up there with the best of them. I believe he had more than Jesse Bates. He had more than anyone else not named Deron Bland. So I think for the Bengals to get some safety help in that division, in the AFC, where you're probably going to have to face Patrick Mahomes later in the season again, I think Geno Stone was probably the best defensive player available on the market outside of Christian Wilkins, and maybe if you count like Brian Burns or the other guys who got franchise tagged. But I think Geno Stone is the best member of the secondary available, and to sign him as the Bengals, especially in division against the Ravens, was a huge signing. And I think it's a great move for the Bengals.
And it's always good to steal from your rivals whenever. I mean, like the Eagles did it in a big way today with the Barkley signing. And, it always happens in free agency. You hate to let those people walk if they're just going to walk into your building again the next year, and you're going to have to play them twice. But I agree. Big signing there. Is the running back market saved? A couple of big contracts, Jack, that went down on the running back side of things.
Yeah, today was definitely a super interesting day for the running backs, especially because the last few years the running back market has been so unbelievably slow. Just teams not willing to give out big contracts to star players, players sitting in free agency for a really, really long time at that position. But today we've seen a flurry of running back signings, including four that are for pretty big money and pretty big names. So definitely a big switch up. But I also think something to note is that a lot of these running back signings have been of players changing teams. It hasn't been a lot of re-signings. So that's also just a very interesting trend. It seems like maybe teams are not willing to pay their own running backs a lot of money, but other teams are happy to swoop them up. So definitely the running back market is fascinating considering that these are some of the most marketable, biggest stars on the teams, but they never get paid for it because of longevity concerns and injury concerns. But yeah, today, I don't know if completely saved is the right word, but this is definitely a big turn in the right direction for the running back market and one that I probably wasn't expecting at all.
Well, and I think it's a good strategy to zag when you can zag. And there's been so much press about, oh, none of these running backs are going to get paid. And you had the Saquon sat out a little bit last year, and you had some others do the same. And I think a couple of teams were like, okay, let's zag, let's pay a running back and get somebody we, think we can do something with. And I think it's the proper time to do it. I don't think there was a ton of running backs out there that you're like, okay, I want to spend a ton of money on. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Austin Eckler. Although with his slight frame and getting close to 30, maybe he doesn't get the money that everybody else is getting. But Jesse, your thoughts on the running back market?
Yeah, I think it's been a great day for running backs, seeing a lot of guys get their contracts. Still some questions about the older running backs. I think it's the running back market for anybody in their early to mid 20s is great. I mean, that's how it usually is, but the Derrick Henrys and the Austin Ecklers of the world might sit on the free agency list for longer than we might expect. And I think that Derrick Henry, I honestly when I go down every single team in the NFL, you might think at first, like, who wouldn't want Derrick Henry? But if you're a team that has a Rachaad White or a James Cook or Devon Achane or any of these young guys who show a lot of potential, do you really want to put Derrick Henry in there and stunt the growth? So I'm struggling to find a team in my mind that just is really, really inept at running back. The main one that comes to mind is the Carolina Panthers, because Miles Sanders was not the answer, obviously, although maybe they just run with Chuba Hubbard next year. I will say one other thing on the running back market. I loved the Antonio Gibson move to the Patriots. 3 years, $11 million. That is not a lot to commit to a pass-catching running back who should complement Rhamondre really well. I think Antonio Gibson has the next James White written all over him. The Patriots love to dump off to the running backs. They love to check down. It's who we are. And especially if there's a new quarterback in town, having a safety blanket of Antonio Gibson, take that receiving weight off of Rhamondre, because now he can actually be the power back that he's supposed to be, instead of Zeke being the power back and Rhamondre kind of the opposite. So Rhamondre gets to be the bell cow. Gibson comes in as the secondary back. And I think that there's a lot of value in having an actual secondary running back that plays a slightly different role. So unbiased, I like that move.
Yeah, Rhamondre, the best offensive player on the Patriots, as said to you, Jesse, by his own brother. So,
yes,
we got the sources. We have our fingers on the pulse of everything.
Although I'd like to hear what Antonio Gibson's brother has to say about that.
Exactly. It could all change right now. I just got an alert that Jags signed Devin Duvernay, so they're trying to beef up the wide receiver room. It seems so. We'll go through some of that. So let's grade the biggest moves. So let's grade all of the quarterback moves from day one of free agency. So we're going to start with Russell Wilson, and we'll start with Jack.
Oh God, why me again? Here we go. I would give this a C minus. I mean, if I'm the Steelers, I think Russell Wilson will be fine. He will be a decent enough quarterback to get you to what you always like to do. The Steelers love to be 10-7. They love to be 11-6, sneak in the playoffs as the 5, 6, 7 seed, somewhere around there. Maybe you win a game, maybe you make it to the divisional round, but you're not making it to the AFC Championship. There's no way. And I think that is what the Russell Wilson move does. It buys you another year of mediocrity. And as a Steelers fan, and I think many Steelers fans are in the same boat as me, when you have been so mediocre for so long, you either want to take that step to the next level and build a championship team, or take one step backwards, to eventually move 2 steps forwards. And what I mean is going boom or bust. Get a guy that might be terrible and can get you in a position to draft a high-level quarterback, or has high potential and could potentially get you to a Super Bowl off his own ability. And that guy that I had in mind was Justin Fields. Obviously, the Steelers did not go that direction, but I personally am disappointed. I think it leads to more mediocrity. And again, I would say C-.
Jesse, higher, lower?
I think it's a little higher. I know Jack's the Steelers fan, so I haven't felt personally the anguish of just being so mid every year. The Patriots did a pretty good job of being really good and then understanding that it's better to just suck for a year, and now they're top 3 in the draft and about to get their quarterback of the future, or at least they hope. You know, you can always end up top 3 in the draft and then take the next Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, insert bad quarterback here. So that can also happen. I think it's a C+, though. It's not a great move, but when else do you have another team willing to pay a quarterback to play for you? I mean, the fact that the Steelers, I think they have to pay $1.2 million of the entire deal. I mean, when else do you have a quarterback that's that good playing for that little money? So I don't think it's a complete waste. I do think it's in the wrong direction. I think you're just keeping yourself in perpetual Steelers 9-8 land and never being better than that and never being worse. But also, I think it does mean something to have a veteran quarterback who's a lot better than Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph come in, and maybe he can unlock the offense and give some development to guys like Deontay Johnson and George Pickens and Calvin Austin and all those weapons, and really open up the offense and see what these guys are made of, which can then give the Steelers some more guidance going forward into next year and the year after that. So I think at the end of the day, does it help them win a championship? No. But you barely have to pay the guy to play quarterback for you. And hopefully your offense gets a little bit better, and then you can get a real sense of what steps you need to make in 2025.
Yeah, it's definitely a stopgap for a couple of years. You saw what you got out of Pickett. Maybe it's not over for him because, you know, Russell is getting up there. So maybe he's out a few weeks and we see Pickett some more this season. But yeah, that's not there. Okay, now we have our Super Bowl winning quarterback. Let's go. It's just kind of a middling move. You got to figure it out. But, you know, they're not playing to be 3-14. They're playing to be where they are, maybe a little upgrade. I think it is an upgraded quarterback for them. So we'll see if they can do anything with it. All right. Mac Jones to the Jaguars. I want you to grade it from the Jaguars side, Jesse.
Ooh, okay. From the Jaguars side, I'll give this a B-. I don't think it's a horrible move. I don't think they had to give that much up to get Mac Jones, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah. And I think it's good to have a quality backup quarterback because Trevor Lawrence has shown that he hasn't been the best at staying fully healthy all year. And in the event that he goes down, at least you know that I'm not going to call Mac Jones a capable starter, but at least you have someone who has started 2-3 full seasons in the NFL and you're not completely, you know, thrown to the wolves. So I'll give it a B-. Like, I don't think it's a great move, but maybe it'll light a bit of a fire under Trevor Lawrence's seat and make him like aspire to be better, or maybe Mac Jones will rub off and he'll just actually be worse. So I'm gonna give it a B-.
Jack, higher or lower?
I would go a little higher. I think I would go with maybe a B, teetering on B+. I think they gave up virtually nothing to get him. And he's obviously still on his rookie contract, so you're not paying him a lot of money. I think that, I mean, look, if you were to draft a quarterback in the 6th round to be your backup, the odds that he's a better backup quarterback than Mac Jones are not really that high. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's a very low risk move. And you bring in a guy that you know that at best, or at worst, is like a solid backup. And at best, if Trevor Lawrence goes down, he's a guy that can come in and play at a decent NFL caliber level of quarterback. To me, low risk move makes a lot of sense. I would go B, maybe even B+.
He did beat the Bills last year, by the way. I just want to say Mac Jones did beat the Bills last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring him home from the state of Florida originally, and like Jesse said, Lawrence has had some injury issues, and he's a really young guy, so you're not getting this old backup that'll never really take you anywhere. And he's got experience. I think it borderline is an A- move. I know everybody's so anti Mac Jones after last year, but in the end, you're not risking anything by doing it. So I really like that move. All right, the big one everybody's talking about: Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. Jack.
Oh yeah, this one's so interesting. I think I would give it a solid B because I think in theory it makes a lot of sense. The last year this was a team that was severely held back by absolutely atrocious quarterback play, and you bring in a guy in Kirk Cousins that the last time we saw him on the field was solidly a top half quarterback in the league. You could argue for borderline top 10. I think that from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Now, he is 36 years old. He's coming off of a torn ACL, or is it no torn Achilles? And that is not an easy injury to recover from at that age. So we could see a drop off in play, and they committed a lot of money to this guy. Guarantee is $50 million signing bonus, $45 million a year. I mean, for 4 seasons, that is a lot to commit to a guy like Kirk Cousins. And while I like the process of thinking like this is a guy that could really elevate us to the next level, I think I can't be a guy that's going to go out there and say this is an absolute A plus, because that is a crazy commitment to someone that has genuine question marks.
All right, Jesse, to you, higher or lower?
I think it's an A. I really think it's a great move. I think Kirk Cousins has been, I think when he's fully healthy, definitely borderline top 10 guy in the league. He's shown that he can throw 4,000 yards, no problem. And again, when I think about a quarterback, I think he could genuinely save Kyle Pitts' career. I think that he's going to absolutely unlock this offense. You've gone from having Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke and what other like sad sap had to play quarterback for them at the end of last year. So it was disgusting. And I think Kirk Cousins is easily the best quarterback in Atlanta since Matt Ryan. And if you can have a guy who can throw 4,000 yards, that means Drake London is probably going to be 1,000-yard receiver. That means Kyle Pitts could probably be 1,000-yard receiver. That means Bijan Robinson can do a lot more in the run game, and hopefully they open up the run game, and the run opens the pass opens the run, and everybody's happy. And, I think overall, Kirk Cousins was probably the best available quarterback on the market out of anybody. Maybe you can consider Justin Fields more valuable if he's younger, but Justin Fields is never going to touch 4,000 yards in his career. And it's not what the Falcons need. They need an actual pocket passer. And the Falcons were still pretty good last season. What were they, 7-10 without like solid quarterback play? And a lot of those games that they lost were games that just slipped away, or a stupid interception at the end of the game because Desmond Ridder loves to throw those. So I think this is an A move for the Atlanta Falcons. And I know he's 35 and he's going to be pretty old by the end of this deal, but that division is so bad that they could easily win the division next year just based off of this move alone.
I think that I agree with Jack. I think it's a B move. I think it was the quarterback. If they were going to go sign a free agent quarterback, the one you go for and get who's had the most success. But I worry about the fact that he's going to be 36 by the time the season starts. He turns 36 in August. He had the Achilles injury, which is one that, definitely has its drawbacks when it comes to rehab and all that. So, and in the end, he's going to have to be, he's not a mobile guy, right? So he's going to be hit again unless they really lean into this offensive line in the draft or maybe free agency coming up. I do think it makes them a lot better, but I ultimately don't think that it's a head and shoulders above all the other quarterbacks. I'm going to put Bryce Young at the very bottom, but in that division. And so, look, it's a move the Falcons needed to make. You can't keep going with Desmond Ridder. Like, this guy is absolute garbage on the football field. And the other thing, though, is that they brought in a new coach. And so if this is Arthur Smith, it's probably a different situation. They brought in a defensive coach. So we'll see how it plays out. I wish them all the pain in the world. I hope it is an absolute failure. But I do think it has the mark to get them, 10-7 at the most. I don't think this improves them so much that, they're getting the 12 wins by any means. All right.
Also,
speaking of the NFC,
thing, I just want to say, don't forget, their coach, Raheem Morris, was their defensive coach during the year that they were in the Super Bowl. So big familiar name there, and I'm sure he has a lot to prove this season.
And the offensive coordinator they hired is a Sean McVay guy, and God knows those guys always seem to be incredible. So
yeah. Well, those guys are everywhere too. I mean, it's not a few people anymore. So, all right, let's go. Let's stay in the NFC South. Baker Mayfield being re-signed, Jesse.
I like this move. I don't think it's the best, but I'm gonna give it a B plus. I think that at the end of the day, the Buccaneers were too good to get a quarterback in this year's draft unless they really want to move up or wait on a late first round quarterback like Michael Penix or one of the other guys in the mix. I like Baker Mayfield, so I think overall you're not going to get the best available quarterback in free agency all the time, and you have to still put out a quality football team. And I think Baker Mayfield got them to the playoffs and won a playoff game. How many quarterbacks available do you really believe can do better than that? I think there's a very short list. And I think once Kirk Cousins is gone off that list, and he's a lot older than Baker as well. So Baker, mind you, is still probably mid late 20s. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but let's see. Baker Mayfield is 28. So he's 7 years younger than Kirk Cousins. So I think overall 3 years, $100 million, it's a lot to pay Baker Mayfield, but I think it's a good deal when you look at the rest of the quarterback market. And again, this is not a very hard division to win. They won the division last year at 9-8. So it's really not difficult to get in as a member of the NFC South. And if Baker Mayfield can get you there, you re-sign Mike Evans and you re-sign Baker Mayfield, keep building this offense and just see where it goes. So I'm gonna give it a B plus.
Yeah, I think both of these moves get these teams to potentially division championships, but that's about it. I mean, these guys aren't leading a long playoff run, I don't believe. I know Baker had a great season last season and got everybody fired up about who he is. And I know Mike Evans is coming back, so he's got his favorite target. But, I think we're still talking about 10-7, 11-6 at the most. And things have to go well for them. And you still have the Saints lurking. All right, I'm going to give you, Jack, the last one. Minshew to the Raiders. Grade it.
Yeah, I actually like this move. I think I would give it like an A minus. I think that of the quarterbacks on the market, he was one of the better ones left. He had a pretty solid year last year with Indianapolis, and I also think he's the perfect guy to get if you want to get a young quarterback in the building. He's the perfect like bridge quarterback. They signed him to a 2-year deal. You have him in there for 2 years. Say the Raiders are able to get their hands on a JJ McCarthy, to have him sit behind Gardner Minshew for 2 years to me makes a lot of sense. Minshew can be competitive for a little bit while you groom a young guy. It's the right fit. And I also think Minshew is a good culture fit, too, with the Raiders. With the rah-rah Antonio Pierce mentality, I mean, that is all Gardner Minshew. So culturally makes sense. Play style makes sense. The type of quarterback he is makes sense. Solid A minus to me.
All right, let's move on to the running back. So let's grade all of the running back moves from day one of free agency. Jesse, starting with you, Josh Jacobs to the Packers.
Ooh, that's a good one to start with. Probably the biggest one of the day, aside from Saquon. Jacobs to the Packers. I'll give this an A. I think that it's a good deal. I think overall, Josh Jacobs probably the best running back available when you consider kind of a lot of different things. But I mean, last season was not what anybody wanted for Josh Jacobs. But the year before, I mean, the man had 1,700 rushing yards, led the league from that standpoint. And I just think that, I mean, Aaron Jones is great. He's not getting any younger. And I was a little surprised that they weren't keeping him, but I guess they just decided to release him and go their separate ways and at least let him choose where he wants to go next. But I think Josh Jacobs fits the timeline. He is younger. He can be the RB1 of the future for the Jordan Love era. And overall, I mean, gives them a very, very strong game on the ground. The Packers have always been heavy about having good running backs in a good running back room. What they do with A.J. Dillon, I'm interested to see. And if they bring in anybody else, or if it's just going to be Jacobs and Dillon. Because I think Josh Jacobs is more of a power back by nature than Aaron Jones. So kind of have to see what the mix is there. But overall, I think it's a great deal. I think it's a lot of money for sure to pay a running back. But I mean, Josh Jacobs, I think, earned it by he won the rushing title last year. And then this past season, just not what you wanted it to be. But I think he's shown that he can easily, in the right system, put up 1,500, 1,600, maybe even 2,000 scrimmage yards. So I think Josh Jacobs, great signing. I'm going to give it an A.
And it gives Jordan Love a little bit more, since he's so young, a little bit more of I wouldn't call him a home run threat necessarily, like he's going to take a 80-yarder to the house, but he's got more speed than, a 30-plus year old running back. So I really like it. I think the Packers are going to be real scary. I just think this is the kind of move they needed to get younger at the one position. And, they lose Bakhtiari, but in the end, he was at the end of his career anyway. I'm going to give the other one to you, Jack. What do you think about Saquon to the Eagles?
Oh man. I mean, well, first of all, just the all the photoshops I've been seeing of Saquon Eagles jerseys, absolutely disgusting. I mean, those are cursed images. So that's definitely one of the signings that's going to take the longest to get used to. But as far as the actual on football field stuff with that, I think I would give it. I think it would be crazy to not give it an A, right? I mean, the Eagles are a team that they've been hit with a lot of retirements, right? You lose Jason Kelsey, you lose Fletcher Cox, two cornerstones of this team for years. And especially Jason Kelsey, when you lose a guy like that, that's a real centerpiece on your offensive line, that's difficult to make up. But one way to do that is by signing an elite dynamic running back that can sort of make up for maybe a little drop off in run blocking. So I really like the idea of bringing in Saquon. It also feels really good, I'm sure, for the Eagles to steal a guy away from the Giants, a guy of that caliber. Yes, they paid a lot of money for Saquon, but I think Saquon's worth it. I think he is one of the top 5 talents for sure at the position in the league. And obviously, it's going to be contingent on health. But as long as the guy's on the field, he's going to produce at a really high level for the Eagles. Yeah, I think that has to be an A signing.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants had their choice 2 years ago, and they chose Daniel Jones over Saquon. So this was going to happen because they weren't going to pay them both. So, Jesse, thoughts on the Saquon move?
I just think, like, does nobody have any pride anymore about not playing for division rivals? And maybe there's some fuel to the fire there of, you know what, I'm going to go play for a division rival and kick your ass twice a year. But I don't know. To me, it's a little taboo to go in division, and especially the Eagles. I mean, I think he's definitely the answer at running back that the Eagles have been praying for the last decade. We just did a trivia last week on the Eagles with the most rushing yards since 2011, and Jalen Hurts was 3rd. So, I mean, that's just disgusting. And I think that overall, I mean, Saquon's definitely going to be the best running back to play for the Eagles since LaShawn McCoy probably. And if he has a good 3 years, he might be the best running back to ever play for the Eagles. So we'll see what it ends up. But I mean, overall, this team is going to be really fun in Madden. We'll see how it actually plays out in real life. They've got superstars at every position you could ask for. The offensive line minus Jason Kelsey will still be very good, among the league's best. And overall, I mean, this should open up the run game, hopefully more than they did last year. I mean, they had a very good run game with DeAndre Swift, and then it kind of just fell apart. It seemed like they just kind of went away from it. And hopefully they stop with the whole push gag and just start giving the ball to their running back in the red zone like they actually should. Otherwise, Saquon's going to finish the year with 3 touchdowns, and it's just going to be hilarious. But I give this move, honestly, I give it an A as well. I think it's a great signing. He's definitely the most talented back that the franchise has honestly ever seen.
And Saquon was born, just to your point, Saquon was born in the Bronx. So I don't know if he was a Jets or a Giants fan growing up, but I think you're right and that's such an old guy take. I had to applaud it you can't go to your division rival. That's crazy. But maybe he's pissed enough about Daniel Jones that he's like, I'm going to be your nightmare.
I mean, is it considered a rivalry if you always lose, though? Maybe he's like, you know what? The Eagles have beaten us all 8 times since I joined the league. Maybe it's time I start winning some of these games.
I don't know. I'd still, like I said, I don't know if he's a Giants fan growing up, but in those times, it was the opposite.
He did go to high school in Whitehall, Pennsylvania, which is pretty close.
He also went to Penn State, right?
And he did go to Penn State. So he did spend a lot of time in Pennsylvania and the Philly area, but I don't know. I don't know about the whole hometown stuff, but yeah, you're definitely right about the principle of going to a division rival. Either he's just trying to stick it to the Giants for not paying him, or it's it's a little shady. It definitely it rubs you the wrong way a little bit.
All right, Jack, sticking with you, former Eagle DeAndre Swift to the Bears.
Ooh, I think I like this signing. I don't love it. I like that the Bears are being aggressive, and I like that the Bears are trying to create a legitimate team. They're trying to not be a laughingstock anymore. They're well on their way there. They have the number 1 and number 9 overall picks. And just getting DeAndre Swift as a weapon for presumably Caleb Williams is nice. I think they paid a little bit too much. I would probably give this a B+. I think Swift had a really good year last year with Philly. There might be a drop-off this year because regression is likely coming off of a career year. And also he's going to a significantly worse O-line than he was with last year. So Yes, he will probably regress, but I also think he's absolutely the best running back on the Bears roster right now. So that makes a lot of sense. Certainly an upgrade. And I understand the Bears thought process here. So I think I would give it a B plus. I'm not over the moon, but makes a lot of sense, and I think he will do well there.
All right, back to you, Jesse. Tony Pollard to the Titans. This one came out of nowhere, in my opinion. What's your grade on it?
This is interesting. I don't know if I love it, honestly. I'm gonna give this one a C plus, B minus in that range. You have a Tony Pollard on the roster, and his name is Tajay Spears. I mean, these are kind of the same running back where the Zeke and Pollard was the Henry and Spears. Like Henry was the goal line back, the power back, the main bell cow. And then Tajay Spears is the quick change of pace guy who's a great pass catcher. He's speedy, he's more agile, not as much of a heavy hitter. And then you saw what Tony Pollard looked like in the lead role last year. And it definitely looked like he didn't have the same juice or the same legs as he did when he was, a secondary or complementary option. So I think maybe it'll work really well where you have both of them and you use both and they're both fresh. And that way you get kind of the best of both worlds. But I think it's a weird signing to bring in a guy who's such a similar build to Tajay Spears. And it didn't really work out that well for the Cowboys last year. I mean, maybe that's the Cowboys' fault. So overall, I mean, they lost Henry and they're not relying fully on Spears to be the lead back, which is a good thing. But I'd say, yeah, C plus, B minus. It was kind of came out of nowhere. So, but honestly, it's a good young running back. I mean, Tony Pollard is great. He's very young, fits the timeline for them. So overall, I mean, it's not a horrible move. It's just kind of one you got to think about for a sec.
Yeah, I think if they go to a 50-50 type split you got to get Spears on the field. He's just too electric. He makes things happen. He's the exact opposite of what Derrick Henry was giving them. And I think the two of them are very similar. But if you reduce the workload enough and you always have speed on the field, I think then it works. But we'll see. So back to you, Jack. Antonio Gibson to the Pats. Jesse's all in favor of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move. I think he definitely fills a role for the Patriots. They didn't really have that shifty third down guy, the receiving back archetype. And I think it'll be nice for Ramondre Stevenson to have that guy that he can, take some pressure off. So, yeah, I like it. I think I would say B plus, A minus, somewhere in that range. I think it's a good signing. It doesn't blow me away, but I think it certainly fills a need and makes a lot of sense.
All right, last major move of the day. Gus Edwards to the Chargers. Jesse, Harbaugh to Harbaugh right here. What do you think of this move for Gus Edwards?
It's interesting, honestly, and it clearly shows that the Chargers are not that committed to Austin Eckler, and I think rightfully so. It's a new era in the Chargers. I think this is actually a great identity shift of getting away from the dump off, like just kind of Justin Herbert checking down to the running back every play and getting a true put your head down power back for this team that will actually allow you to play on the line of scrimmage. Austin Eckler, I think he's a great running back. I think he's a great pass catching running back, but it is so hard watching him beat guys out with his speed and beat them out with his strength. He doesn't do both of those things very often. And he's not the guy to just kind of run through the A gap and get you a couple yards or really play on the goal line. So I think Gus Edwards is a great answer to running back for them. The Chargers have also been pretty commonly just like throwing in whatever rookie or whatever backup that they have, whether it's Joshua Kelly or Justin Jackson or whoever else is on the roster, and it being okay. But I think overall, I'm going to give this an A because I think Gus Edwards is very capable of being a great red zone back. He had over 10 touchdowns last year. And also, this will actually allow you to get Justin Herbert to spread the field, move the ball downfield, use that gunslinging arm of his instead of just dumping it off to Austin Eckler all the time. So I think it's a good move, good identity shift, and I'm going to give it an A.
I think where it helps Justin Herbert also is just to have a guy on 3rd and 1 that can get it without you having to throw the ball. They got to the point where Austin Eckler was getting stuffed all the time, so they couldn't even run the ball on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and short. And now you have a guy that can lean forward, hopefully, and get you that yard, and you keep the drives going without having to throw the ball.
It was a bad combination to have Brandon Staley, who loves going for it on 4th and short, and no running back who can get you 4th and short.
Right. Jack will not disagree with any hate towards Brandon Staley. We also had Devin Singletary to the Giants. I'm going to move on from that, though, so we can talk wide receivers. So let's grade all the wide receiver moves from day one of free agency in the NFL. This actually happened a few days ago, but I think it might be one of the biggest moves. Jerry Jeudy to the Browns. Jack, grade it.
Ooh, I think I would give this an A. I really like it for the Browns. They did not give up very much at all. What was it, a 6th-round pick in the end?
I think it was a fifth.
Was it a fifth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very low investment for a guy that is very talented. Obviously, he hasn't been quite as exceptional at the NFL level as a lot of people thought when he came out of Alabama. But this is a super talented player. Denver never really unlocked him. And to get him as your number 2 alongside Amari Cooper, and you still have Elijah Moore there, and you still have David Njoku at tight end, and you're going to get Nick Chubb back in the run game next year, obviously coming off of a brutal injury, but still, this is a dangerous offense. The rich get richer offensively. Obviously, you still have the Deshaun Watson problem, but everything aside from Deshaun Watson about this Browns team is borderline Super Bowl contender. And Jerry Jeudy just pushes that even further. So to me, very low risk. It did not cost you much, and could be super duper rewarding given the talent of Jerry Jeudy and a guy that really needed a fresh start. So maybe even A+. I love this for the Browns.
I definitely think it's an A+. I mean, you get a guy that can stretch the field. You already have Elijah Moore, and you have Amari Cooper, like you said. You have Njoku. You have Chubb coming back. I mean, the only thing that can stop this offense is Deshaun Watson. Let's be real. I mean, he is the only one you look at and you're like, okay, this guy's got to perform, because you have all the weapons around him. It's a dream offense to be in, and the defense isn't too shabby either, let's remember. So if I'm in the the AFC North, I'm a little worried about what's going on there, but I always know I got Deshaun Watson. If he's not ready to come back from everything he needs to come back from, that team's going to be in real peril. But I thought that was an A+ move. You got him for cheap. It's better than any 4th round or 5th round wide receiver you were going to draft. So big time move there, I think. Jesse, to you, Michael Pittman extended by the Colts for $71 million over 3 years. Graded.
It's a lot of money for sure, but I'm going to give it an A, maybe even an A+, because I think Michael Pittman's that good. I think he had a very, very maybe he might even be the most underrated receiver in the NFL. And you could say that about a lot of guys and make a case, but he was like under the radar as a top 12 fantasy receiver last year. And I know it's just fantasy, but I mean, the fact that he was that good and that consistent, and just he seems like he's got great hands. He's huge. He's fast. He's strong. He's a good blocker. I think he's everything that you'd want in a wide receiver. And if you weren't going to give him the money, someone else was. So I think extending him now for the next 3 years while Anthony Richardson is, at his youngest and hopefully at his healthiest for the next 3 years. So overall, I think it's an A+ move. Michael Pittman deserves that every single cent that he got. And I think he's a great receiver that you just cannot let go. So good job, Indy.
Let's take a pause on the grading and talk some T. Higgins. So T. Higgins says he wants out with the Bengals. So A, is this a good move for T. Higgins? B, what did the Bengals do, Jack?
I mean, I think it's purely a money thing with T. Higgins. I think he does. I think he said he really loves being in Cincinnati, but the Bengals don't want to pay him. And it makes sense. I mean, you have a massive Joe Burrow contract. You have a massive Jamar Chase contract looming. I mean, this is a team that is spending a lot of money right now. And T. Higgins is an unbelievable wide receiver. This is a guy that's going to demand top dollar. It makes sense the Bengals wouldn't want to pay him. Will they miss him? I think absolutely. I think they are a significantly worse team without him. But I also think for T, it makes sense to want to go in a different direction. As far as where I think maybe he could end up, one team I saw that I really was interested in was the Texans. I think getting him in there as a true wide receiver one, you pair him with Nico Collins, with Tank Dell when he comes back, just give another weapon to CJ Stroud, make that offense as good as it possibly can be. I love that idea to make him the Texans wide receiver one of the future. I also saw the Packers, which is one that I really like. They've been a team that's been receiver needy for years, but they finally had some guys step up this year. Christian Watson is, of course, talented but inconsistent. Romeo Doubs, solid player, not a one. But T. Higgins would be a true one for that team. Get Jordan Love, his guy. I really like that fit as well. I think it makes sense for both sides to move on. And I think T. Higgins is going to end up being a really big commodity in this wide receiver market and will be one of the bigger pieces moved this offseason for sure.
All right, Jesse, you're the Bengals. Do you trade T. Higgins?
Well, they already tagged him, so they have him for a year if they want him for this next upcoming season. But honestly, I'd say yeah, because at the end of the day, T. Higgins is good enough to be a wide receiver 1. And if you know that and other teams know that, then that means that he's going to get what a wide receiver 1 is worth. He's put up like 3,000-yard seasons as the number 2 in Cincinnati. And I would just love to see what he could do with the full workload and like 100+ targets. Like he's getting 1,000 yards on like 70, 80 catches. I would love to see what he does with over 100 receptions in a season. So I think you trade him because at the end of the day, Ja'Marr Chase is your guy. He's your number 1. Tyler Boyd is a very serviceable number 2 or number 3. And he had to play that spot a lot last year with both Chase and Higgins being out for different amounts of time. So overall, if you're not going to keep him, you might as well trade him. Otherwise, he's just going to walk next year. So I'd say it's your best chance to just trade him while you have him and see what you can get back for him. And maybe you can build up some other positions. Maybe you build up the defense more. But I mean, it sucks that they don't want to sign him because I think he's really good. And I think that he's worth every penny that somebody will pay him. The Bengals just might not have the money because of what Jack said with all the other people that they have to pay. So clearly T. Higgins is at most 3rd on the pecking order of who deserves to get paid. And for a lot of other teams, he would be first, especially, hey, come to the Patriots. We'll treat you nice and well in New England. So I think there's tons of teams that are needy for a wide receiver, and the Bengals should definitely milk whatever they can get from that trade because otherwise you're just going to lose them to free agency.
Yeah, I mean, you might lose him, but if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm like, look, I want a full stable of wide receivers this year. I think we can win this year, especially with their defensive signing. So,
and don't forget what he did in the Super Bowl. He was better than Ja'Marr Chase in the Super Bowl.
He was. I will never forget that. All they had to do was win, and he was my MVP pick. I think they run it back one more year. They're going to hope it's an unbelievable year. They win the Super Bowl and T. Higgins wants to come back and they want to pay him. And if not, and you get there, you get somewhere close, he's going to test the market. He's going to get paid next year, whether it's from the Bengals or from another team. But all right, last free agent signing that went to a different team, Gabriel Davis to the Jaguars. Jesse, grade it.
I honestly like it. I'm gonna give this one an A-. I think it's a good deal. How much money was it for exactly? Do we know how much money? It wasn't a ton.
I think it was okay. Good.
3 years, 39. So you get Gabe Davis, 3 years, $39 million. That is $31 million roughly cheaper than the Michael Pittman contract. Now, is he anywhere close to Michael Pittman? No. However, Gabe Davis is a baller, and he's shown that when it comes to whatever stats you need I think he led the entire league in like yards per reception. He's a great deep threat, one of the better red zone threats as well. He definitely had more touchdowns than Diggs did last year. And I think he's a really, really good complementary piece. They have Christian Kirk, they have Gabe Davis, yet to be seen if they re-sign Calvin Ridley. So I think it's a good move to get yourself another very solid wide receiver 2. I think Christian Kirk has honestly shown that he can be the wide receiver 1 in whatever system he was before Ridley got there. And even after Ridley got there, he kind of reclaimed that crown by the end of the season. So if you have Kirk and Davis on the outside, I think it opens it up for Trevor Lawrence to really sling it downfield. Both of those guys are great deep threats. So I'm going to give this one an A. I think it's a great move. And Gabe Davis, for that kind of money, I think he deserves it. And I think it's a good move for the Jags.
I honestly really disagree with that. I would have it as a C or a C-. I really, to me, Gabe Davis, this signals that you're not re-signing Calvin Ridley to me. I don't think you bring in Gabe Davis and also pay Ridley. And if that's the case, that this is a downgrade. I think that they play a somewhat similar way. They're both very good deep threats. They're both super athletic. Both have drop issues. I would argue Gabe Davis's might be worse than Calvin Ridley's. I don't know, man. And like the only argument to me is that Davis is probably a little bit cheaper than Ridley will be. So maybe you're saving a little bit of money here. But to me, as far as whether or not this makes you better in the receiver room than you were last year, assuming Ridley is not coming back, which I believe, I think you're worse off than you were last year. So to me, this is a C or C minus. I'm not thrilled about it if I'm a Jags fan.
Look, I'm happy about it, especially if Ridley's leaving, because I need that second receiver. The problem with him is he goes away, and that's when he had Stephon Diggs on the other side. And some games he's all pro, going to make the Hall of Fame, Gabe Davis, and some days he's how did you ever make it to the NFL, Gabe Davis? So I think that inconsistency is going to hurt the Jags ultimately, but I don't think unless they were going to get T. Higgins or a real A-list wide receiver. I think this is a strong move to shore up what they have going on. Let's keep going with Trevor Lawrence and see where it goes. But yeah, he's just such a perplexing player that it's tough to judge until you see what happens. He ends up with great stats at the end of the year, but it doesn't necessarily equate to consistency every week. Let's get to the defensive side. So the big one, Jesse, starting with you, Christian Wilkins to the Raiders.
A+. I think this is, like you guys said, I think this is the best move of the day. This is easily the biggest signing I think that the Raiders have had in a while. Maybe unless you're counting like Devontae Adams. But on the defensive side, this is another guy on the line that's going to give you nightmares. Next to Max Crosby, this is going to be a very scary D-line to work with. I think it's a great move and a move that the Raiders needed as well because their defense was not good at all last year. And then in the second half of the year when they switched coaches, things really started to click. And this suddenly became like a shutdown unit. Jack Jones started having some monster games and just they really changed pace. And I think they were holding all of their opponents to 20 points or less. And it's just a good defense starts with a good D-line. And I think overall, Christian Wilkins was probably the best defender available out of anybody. And to sign him on the first day, I think the first move of the day as well, like the early, and they were just on top of it. So this is an A+, 100%.
Yeah. And that's what Jack and I already gave it. So Jack, I'm going to give you another that I think a lot of people were, pretty happy about and thought was a great move. Xavier McKinney to the Packers.
Yeah, this is definitely an A for me, possibly an A+. He's a young player. He's very good. And this is a really good safety market this year. There's been a lot of good players that have been released. There's a lot of guys that came into the class as free agents that were really good in the safety market. Xavier McKinney was arguably the best of them. And for the Packers to make this addition, basically swapping out Darnell Savage for him, that's a clear upgrade. I mean, Xavier McKinney is a much better player than Darnell Savage is in what was one of the bigger weaknesses on the Packers as a whole last year in their safety room. So, yeah, to me, this is an absolute A, possibly an A+, a really good player that fills a need. I mean, that's exactly what you want in free agency. So, well done, Green Bay.
All right, back to you, Jesse. The Geno Stone move to the Bengals. We talked about it earlier as being a big one to steal somebody from your rival. What's your grade?
Another, I know I might just be giving out A+ left and right, but this is an A+ move to get a guy, like I said earlier, he was second in the league in interceptions last year as a safety. And this is a guy, by the way, I did not know this. Geno Stone was the 219th pick in the 2020 draft. He was a seventh rounder who has now become basically an all-pro safety, or at least a Pro Bowler. And he had a phenomenal year last year. 2 years, $15 million. That's it. $7.5 million a year. That's really not that much money to pay a guy. And I don't know what safety money is like or what DB money is like specifically, but when you think of all the huge contracts going around today, $7 million is really not that much to pay a guy to really shore up the secondary. And they, this is the Bengals who lost Jesse Bates and are now filling that hole that was pretty evident last season. So losing who's arguably the best safety in the NFL to the Falcons, now replacing him with another really top tier guy, especially in division, just as the cherry on top. So I'm going to give this one an A+. And I think this could be a move that you look back on at the end of the season when the Bengals are in the AFC Championship or winning the AFC Championship and think, man, that was a big move that led them to where they are right now.
That and keeping T. Higgins. All right, Jack, to you, Kevin Byard to the Bears.
Yeah, I would give it like a B-, C+. I'm not the biggest Kevin Byard guy. He did not look good with the Eagles at the end of the year last year. They released him because of that. And the Bears, I mean, again, I really like the Bears' mindset this offseason. I like that they're being aggressive. They're making moves. They're trying to be a legitimate team again next year. Once, of course, they get Caleb Williams in the building. So I like the mindset. I just am not the biggest Kevin Byard guy as a player, especially at this stage in his career. So I'm not going crazy for this. I think I would say B minus. I think B minus is fair. But not the biggest fan of this one.
All right. Well, look, it's been a ton. There's one big question left. Jesse, I'll give it to you. Over under 48 hours until Bakhtiari is a Jet. True or false?
And I think it's under
Or
because
over,
I think it's under because 13 minutes ago he tweeted out a picture of him with Aaron Rodgers sitting on like the sideline together. Aaron Rodgers liked his farewell post to Green Bay, and then he tweet replied it with a photo of them sitting next to each other alone in Lambeau. So I think it's under. I think this might be later this afternoon. Like I think it could be very soon, unless it's 5:45. You know, the Jets front office has probably gone home for the day, so we'll see what they do tomorrow.
Yeah, look, at least your teams are doing something. Mine is still trying to cut salary to get under the salary cap, although they're almost there. It's amazing to me every year how the Saints find a way to get back under. It's going to curse them, and they're never going to win a Super Bowl until they just blow it up one year and suck, and then try to come back.
I'm just sad that the Saints couldn't have got Russell Wilson with all of the money that the Broncos were paying him for Sean Payton just to have to stomach that. Would have been so funny.
Oh yeah, no, don't worry though. The Mickey Loomis money laundering scheme never fails. I mean, I'm convinced it's the only way it's possible.
I'm surprised more teams don't follow it because it's offering big contracts, changing it to guaranteed money the second year or third year down the line, and then getting that money back in salary cap. So now that means a lot of money goes out the door because all that unguaranteed money on other teams ends up not getting paid out, and then they can save it. So the Saints pay it; they just pay it differently. But obviously, it's not working. We didn't go to the playoffs the last 2 years. So, okay, what is your biggest free agency day one overreaction, Jack?
All right. Well, I think I will stick with my favorite signing of the day and say the Raiders have a top 5 defense next year. And that is definitely an overreaction, but I think the root of a great defense is your pass rush, and they are going to have a fantastic pass rush next year, adding Christian Wilkins to what was already a pretty good one last year. And I think they still could use some more work in the secondary. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a move in the secondary here, either in free agency or in the draft. But the combination of that pass rush with Patrick Graham as their defensive coordinator, who is one of my favorite defensive coordinators in the league. I think he was fantastic when he was with the Giants. He had one down year with his first year with the Raiders, but he's been great ever since and really was unbelievably impressive last year with a defense that did not have a ton of talent, but played really, really well with a lot of heart. I just really like what the Raiders are building on that side of the ball, and I think that unit's going to be super scary next year.
Jesse?
My day one overreaction is that the Packers are winning the NFC North next year, and it's not going to be close. I think that Detroit had a great year. I think that the Packers are about to have an even better year. They made some big moves after having an already deep run this season. They got younger, they got better, and look out.
All right, mine. Saquon Barkley will be a top 3 fantasy running back next year. Let me tell you 2 reasons. Number 1, he's getting to play with the Eagles. How great is that? I know they lost their center, but for the most part, that line is returning. I love that for him. And B, NFL is going to void the tush push. So when it's 4th and 1 or 1st and goal or whatever, he's going to get that carry. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns. You're going to see the best version of Saquon Barkley this year coming up. Top 3 running back in the league for fantasy.
The real question of the day should be who can squat more, Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley?
Oh, yeah,
it's
got to be
Saquon.
Jalen Hurts. Oh no, I
way.
got Jalen Hurts. Have you seen that man?
Jalen Hurts, man. It's close. It's close.
I'm sure they'll figure that out in the offseason. All right, You want to do some better than? Is T. Higgins better than? Edition right here. All right.
Like it.
We talked about him earlier. We talked about how there might be a trade coming down. Now we have to decide who is he better than within the scope of NFL wide receivers. So starting with you, Jesse, then we'll go Jack. George Pickens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, T. Higgins is better. George Pickens is more athletic, so I would say he might have a higher ceiling, but right now T. Higgins is absolutely better.
How could he be more athletic than T. Higgins, who's literally built like LeBron? Like
Have you?
he's so
Well,
huge.
okay, I'm not saying he's built bigger. Have you seen the way George Pickens can jump and can move? I mean,
Have you seen the way T. Higgins can jump?
Okay, fair.
He's
And move.
6'4", 220 with probably like a 40-inch vertical.
All right, so I'll agree with that. T. Higgins better. DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh yeah. This is, I mean, prime D Hop, no. Tennessee Titans in 2024 D Hop, absolutely.
I mean, I honestly think D Hop is really underrated right now, but I would still go T. Higgins. I think D Hop with better quarterback play would still be a top 15 receiver in the NFL, but it's got to be T. Higgins right now.
I think you're delusional about D Hop, but and I'm gonna agree with Jesse. Like obviously D Hop in his prime was better than T. Higgins, but that was probably closer than we'd like to think. So I'm gonna say T. Higgins is better. DK Metcalf.
That's a tough one. But I think I'm actually going to say T. Higgins because I don't think that their stats are that far off. And that's with DK Metcalf being the number 1 and T. Higgins being the number 2. I think that they're kind of similar of like really big frame guys that, go make contested catches like they really go up and get the ball. I think T. Higgins is slightly better though. I do. So yeah.
I think I would take T. Higgins as well. Every time I watch DK Metcalf play, I am thoroughly disappointed. I mean, for a guy at that size with that speed, he should be a top 5 receiver in the league, and he just isn't. And I think T. Higgins gives you better week-to-week consistency, and I'm a big proponent of that. So give me T.
Yeah, look, I think this is T. Higgins for the consistency factor. DK looks like a guy that should be better, but he hasn't performed. Now he doesn't have Joe Burrow throw him in the ball either, so that's definitely a factor there. But Drake London,
yeah, no question.
Yeah, certainly T. Higgins. I mean, they're very similar players, and T just does everything better.
right? I mean, look, Drake London has had terrible quarterback play, but the dude doesn't exude what you see every day out of T. Higgins, trying to get open, being a good teammate, the whole bit. Zay Flowers.
Definitely T. Higgins. Zay Flowers had a good season, but they're very different. I mean, Zay is like the human joystick, smaller, more agile guy, and T. Higgins is just like a beast. So they're pretty different skill sets, but at the end of the day, I would definitely rather have a T. Higgins on my team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would definitely take T. Higgins as well. I think Zay has the ability to be better than T one day, but that day is not today.
Yeah, I don't think he does. I don't think he'll ever be the player that T. Higgins is. But and like Jesse said, I think they're very different. But give me T. Higgins on that one. Let's skip ahead a few. Amari Cooper.
I'm out of turn.
You can go if you want to go first. Go for it.
All right, sure. I'll take Amari Cooper. I'm a huge Amari Cooper guy. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the entire league. He is basically the not talked about version of Mike Evans, just being incredibly consistent every single year. 1,000-yard year after 1,000-yard year, he's always very often he's healthy. He plays almost every game, and I just am a big Amari Cooper guy. I'm 100% taking him.
I don't know though. Like it's close, but Amari Cooper is 5 years older than T. Higgins. So, like, okay, I'm thinking too much of who would I rather have, not who's actually better. I think Amari Cooper is a better route technician, and I think that in that sense he's better. I do think T. Higgins is better at some other things than Amari Cooper is as well. And I'm going to take T. Higgins. I think his ceiling is higher. As consistent as Amari Cooper has been, his best career year was this past season with 1,250 yards. It's not bad. I think that T. Higgins has gotten near those numbers as the number 2 guy. And I just think that I really think T. Higgins is capable of 1,500, 1,600 yard seasons. And I would love to see it happen on a team. And I think that his ceiling is just higher. So I'm going to take T.
I think it's T. Higgins too. I agree, Jack, with the consistency year to year with Amari Cooper, but the guy can do a little Gabe Davis impersonation every once in a while where he has 2 catches for 3 yards. And you're like, why am I starting this guy? And then the next week he's over 200 with 3 touchdowns. So
yeah,
while that obviously you're going to take the good with the bad. That's just too hard to trust. Give me T. Higgins. I think he's a lot more consistent. Let's see. Devontae Smith.
Oof.
Now we don't know who goes next because Jack messed it
up.
That's why I shouldn't be going out of turn.
Well, we can go me first and then Jack first and just alternate like that if you want. But because that way I don't steal all of Jack's good takes. But this is tough. Oh my God. They're very neck and neck, and they're kind of the same player of like a number 2 who would probably be a number 1 on a lot of other teams. I'm actually going to lean Devontae Smith on this one. Just like it's hard to go against a guy who was once considered the best player in all of college football. And like just him winning a Heisman to me means a lot. And I know that we're talking about NFL football here, but I think Devontae Smith is more skilled than T. Higgins. So I'm going to say Smith.
Yeah, I think I would actually take T. Higgins. And I actually would sort of use the point that you said as far as a player that is a 2 that could be a 1. I think T. Higgins can be a 1. I don't know that Devontae Smith could be. I think he's a really, really good, super high-end number 2. And I think in his role with the Eagles, he's fantastic. But I don't know that I would want Devontae Smith to be my wide receiver 1. T. Higgins is a guy I am more than happy to roll with as my wide receiver 1. And I think he will shine in that opportunity. So I would take T.
Yeah, I think it's T. Higgins too. I think the NFL game's a little different. Devontae Smith's going to have a great career, and you're not going to be worried about him if he's on your fantasy team or anything like that. But I think ultimately, T. Higgins has the better career. I think he's better today, and I'm going to take him as well. Chris Olave, going to you, Jack, first.
Okay. All right. I think. Oh man, I think I would slightly lean T. Higgins. This might be the closest one yet for me, though. I have them ranked probably around a very similar level. I would probably lean T. I think for a similar reason. I think he is the prototype of a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Big bodied, strong at the catch point. I mean, a great route runner, solid hands. I mean, he really just does it all. And not that Chris Olave doesn't, but I think we've seen this a little longer also from T. Higgins. As far as year-to-year consistency, I think that also gives him a bump. But this is really splitting hairs for me, but I think I would give the slight edge to T.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, I think I'm also going to give the slight edge to T. Higgins. It's very close. This one's really a toss-up. Chris Olave's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons entering the league. And I mean, T. Higgins started off with basically 3,000-yard seasons to enter the league. He had 900 in his first year, and then 1,100, 1,000, and then only 650 last year. But, he missed a lot of time. So this is really close. I think I would just lean T. Higgins on this one, but it's close. And honestly, who knows? If we saw Chris Olave play with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins play with Derek Carr, this might be a different answer. And I honestly think that probably has a good amount to do with it. So they're probably equal, honestly, but I would just lean T. Higgins. But if they swap quarterbacks, I think I would swap answers.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean T. Higgins as well. But here's the answer. Mickey Loomis, get on the phone. You got Mike Thomas, all right? He wants to be out of here. Get him out of here. Let's bring T in. Let's make us a real. And then next year, we get a quarterback. We're going to be set.
Brian, you forgot about the part where T. Higgins wants to be paid, though.
I'm not worried about that. I'm getting.
Well, you're not worried about it, but the Saints front offense is it's what the $60 million in negative space is just going to work itself out.
Let me just tell you, the Saints front office is the least likely to be worried about it. They're going to figure it out because they always do. They're less worried about it than I am. I think it matters. Mickey Loomis is like, don't worry about it. We got monopoly money. We'll make this work. All right. All right, let's move on. Nico Collins.
I'm going to say, that is tough because Nico Collins just had a very good season. I'm going to say it's T. Higgins, though. I think this could be proven wrong otherwise. And Nico Collins, yeah, he had a great year, 1,300 yards this season. That's close, though. I think I'm going to take T.
Yeah, I would also take T. Higgins. Earlier when I was talking about potential landing spots, the Texans were one of my top T. Higgins landing spots. And I said that I like the idea of Nico Collins and Tank Dell as complements to T. Higgins. And I think that would be the way it would play out if T. Higgins did eventually become a Texan. I think he would be the one. and Nico Collins would be a very good complementary number 2. But at the same time, the number 2, I think T. Higgins is just a better player.
Yeah, I don't think this one's particularly close. Not as close as Chris Olave or Devontae Smith. I think it's T. Higgins very clearly. Nico's getting there. He just started his career. So give me Terry McLaurin.
Ooh, I'm going to say Terry McLaurin for that one. And I think it's the first one I've gone in the other direction. I think Terry McLaurin is like he's imprisoned on the Commanders. And I think he's so good and so talented. And the fact that he's had the type of production with the awful quarterback play that he has, I think Terry McLaurin is a very, very solid wide receiver 1 on any team. And I know that there's been some issues with consistency, but there's also been a lot of issues with Washington's QB room. So I'm going to take Terry.
Yeah, I've been using that argument for Terry McLaurin for so long in so many of these clips. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of giving Terry McLaurin just a boost because of awful quarterback play. What we see on the field is that T. Higgins performs better. And I think for that reason, I would take T. Higgins. I feel bad for Terry. You're right. He's imprisoned in Washington. And maybe if he ever had like a competent quarterback play, he would have a much better year. But I'm sick of just giving giving Terry McLaurin props because he gets screwed with terrible quarterback play. I'm going to use my eyes and take T. Higgins.
I agree. I'm going T. Higgins. I do think McLaurin's in a tough situation, but he's also just not making it happen. I don't know. It's hard to judge on the potential here with another quarterback when he's been there so long. But what about Michael Pittman Jr.?
Ooh, Mr. Man who just got paid his own amount of money. Shit, that's tough. I honestly don't even know if I can give you an answer on that one. It's that close for me.
So the question is T. Higgins better than? Then your answer would be no. If they're the same.
I'll say, oh my God. I'll say no. I'll say no. I don't think he's that much worse. I just don't think he's significantly better than him or better than him at all. I think that they're on the same plane. So I'm not going to say that like this is like an 89 versus a 90 or like things like that. But I'm going to say no, he's not better than Michael Pittman. I think that they're the same amount of skill. I don't think he's better.
Yeah, I think they're super, super similar players and both very, very good. But I also think I would slightly lean Pittman. We've seen him produce as the wide receiver 1. I think what I would almost say is that Michael Pittman is what we assume T. Higgins could be as a wide receiver 1. So, like, yes, do I think if T. Higgins was the one on a team and probably will be the one on a team very soon, could he be Michael Pittman or even better? Yes. But to what we've seen to this point, I think what Michael Pittman has done would give him the slightest edge. And it's very slight. These are two really similar players that are both really good.
Yeah, I think it's T. Higgins. I think y'all are overvaluing Pittman just slightly. I'm not saying I wouldn't love to have him in my fantasy team or my real team, but I just like the trajectory of T. Higgins' career a little better. So I'm going to say T. Higgins. Mike Evans.
Mike Evans. I would love to live in fantasy land and think T. Higgins is better. Mike Evans is everything that T. Higgins wants to be and has been for the last like 8 seasons. I mean, that many 1,000+ yard seasons still at this age, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. It's got to be Mike Evans.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. It's 100% Mike Evans. We hope that T. Higgins as a wide receiver 1 will be what Mike Evans has been for the last 7 years or 8 years or however long it's been. So it has to be Mike Evans.
Oh, yeah, this is Mike Evans. I don't think this one's close. I think this is the first one not close in the other direction. Jalen Waddle.
It's Jalen Waddle. I would, again, this is close, but Jalen Waddle has had a phenomenal start to his career, and especially being behind Tyreek Hill as well. This is another guy who is a number 2 on almost every – this is another guy who's a number 1 on almost every single team except his own. And if I had Jalen Waddle and T. Higgins in the same depth chart, Jalen Waddle is above him.
Yeah, I think I would take Jalen Waddle too. That he's just so dynamic, and it's crazy because he gets overlooked because of Tyreek. But like this might be the second most explosive speed deep threat in the entire league, after Tyreek Hill. Like, he is really unbelievable in that department. And that is a rare ability and an incredibly valuable ability that T. Higgins just doesn't have and can't possibly replicate. So I would take Waddle.
I think it's hard to judge it based on looking at them both play. Like Tua is just such a downgrade at the quarterback position. I know we've said that about a lot of these players that don't play with Joe Burrow, but I'm probably going to take Jalen Waddle, knowing that if he was playing with Joe Burrow, he'd be just so much better. And T. Higgins were playing with Tua, it'd be a disaster. So, Brandon Ayuk.
Wow. I'm gonna lean Ayuk for that one. I think based off the year he just had, I mean, being that good as like like third or fourth option. I mean, I know he had probably led the team in targets, but like being that good with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey all in the mix as well. You can look at it two ways. One, there's so many good people to cover. Of course he's going to produce. Or two, wow, he was still able to produce with that many mouths to feed. He must be pretty good. So I think overall, I'm going to say, yeah, Brandon Ayuk is better. So no, T. Higgins is not better than Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I would take Ayuk as well. And I'm going to piggyback off your argument a little bit and say that, yeah, the second part of that, yeah, there's all those mouths to feed and he still produced. The other mouths were fed. It's not like the other guys had a bad season because Ayuk had a really good season. The whole team was really good, and Ayuk produced arguably the best out of all of them, not named Christian McCaffrey. So I think Ayuk, what he did this year was so unbelievably impressive. And I think if there's anyone like T. Higgins is probably the number one guy in the league that you want to see what he could do as a wide receiver one on a team. Ayuk would probably be my number two.
Yeah, I'm going T. Higgins on this one. We're splitting hairs at this point. It's really, really close. But I'll give you each one more. Garrett Wilson, Jesse.
Ooh, it's so hard to tell because Garrett Wilson has like a 1-year sample size. He was the rookie of the year. And then last year, I don't even want to look at the tape because he was playing with Zach Wilson the whole year. That's really tough. I thought if Garrett Wilson had Aaron Rodgers, he was going to be like 1,600, 1,700 yards, like that level of dominance. And it's funny because in the Madden franchise that we run, I have Garrett Wilson and T. Higgins are my wide receiver 1 and 2. And the third guy on this list is my wide receiver 3. But I think Garrett Wilson's better. I think he's more skilled. And I think that eventually by the end of their careers that Garrett Wilson will have more success. I think, again, quarterback play is a huge part of it. If you give T. Higgins, Sam Darnold, or whoever else like Zach Wilson, his numbers are not going to look nearly that great. And Garrett Wilson, mind you, still had a decent year amidst all of that. I mean, he still had 1,000 yards with the quarterbacks that they had. So I'm going to say it's Garrett Wilson.
This is absolutely, without a doubt, Garrett Wilson for me. To me, with even mediocre quarterback play, Garrett Wilson would be a top 5 receiver in the league. I think he's so unbelievably talented.
Top 5.
And I'm hoping we get a healthy year of Aaron Rodgers next year because this is, I would already say he's my offensive player of the year pick with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson is so unbelievably good.
Aaron Rodgers, another Achilles sufferer, like we talked about with Kirk Cousins, and much older. So, no, I agree. It's Garrett Wilson. I don't think it's particularly close, although I think both of them have a really high ceiling. DJ Moore, last one.
Hey, that's close. I'm going to give the edge to DJ Moore. He's been really, really good, and I think he was definitely the answer for the Bears at number 1 for their receiving group, and I think he's shown that he can really be a number 1 guy, and I'm excited to see what he can do next year with Caleb Williams. So I'm going to give the edge to DJ Moore and be excited.
Yeah, I mean, before last season, I probably would have taken T. Higgins.
Yeah.
But DJ Moore was just fantastic last year. I mean, he was really unbelievable. He was better than I ever thought he would be for the Bears, seriously. And I think the sky is the limit for him. I think he's only going to continue to get better with Caleb Williams. And even if T. Higgins' numbers explode in a wide receiver 1 role, I still think I would take DJ Moore.
Yeah, I think this is the one situation where you have a wide receiver where you're like, in spite of his quarterback play, both in Carolina and Chicago, look at what he's put up. Look at the numbers he's put up. So I agree, it's DJ Moore. But yeah, no, he's just. I'm interested to see what he does with a rookie quarterback next year. He's going to have to take a few steps back, I think, and then by the end of the season be back better than where he is this year. So
I don't know. I think a rookie Caleb Williams might play better than Justin Fields did last year.
I think he will in the end, but I think he's going to be a.
You better hope so.
So, all right.
Year one, I don't know. Yeah.
A lot of big Achilles talk, a lot of big Falcon talk today, which I love. Which Falcon will be better in fantasy in 2024? London or Pitts? Jack.
I think I'm going to go Kyle Pitts. I hate to be on the Kyle Pitts train every single year, but I still believe so much in the talent. I was a huge fan of him in the draft. I thought he was an absolute athletic freak for the tight end position. And Kirk Cousins loves his tight ends. Wherever Kirk Cousins has gone throughout his career, whether it was in Washington, in Minnesota, and especially ever since they made that TJ Hawkinson trade. And the explosion that happened in TJ Hawkinson's career, and not only for TJ, but also Kirk played a lot better as soon as TJ Hawkinson got in that building. I think this is a make or break year for Kyle Pitts, and I think if this is going to be that explosion year that we've been waiting for, Kirk Cousins is the perfect quarterback to have for him. So maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think that it is set up really nicely for Kyle Pitts to have that great year that we've been waiting for.
I think it's Drake London. And as good as Kyle Pitts is, okay, actually, Kyle Pitts will have more value as a tight end in fantasy football because there's only so many good tight ends. But I think Drake London will absolutely finish with more targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, every receiving metric. Look, Kirk Cousins was the quarterback for Justin Jefferson's record-breaking years. I think that whoever his wide receiver one is going to eat a lot. And I know that TJ Hawkinson was fed his share of food as well for the Vikings. But I think overall, the wide receiver one is always going to have the most production. And Kirk Cousins has shown that whoever his wide receiver one is going to eat. Stephon Diggs did it. Actually, did they overlap? Or was it still Keenum? Either way.
I think that was still Case Keenum.
Either way, Justin Jefferson has had year after year with a ton of yards every single year and a lot of touchdowns too. And not to mention Jordan Addison having his breakout campaign last year with Kirk Cousins as well. So overall, I think Drake London is actually primed for a breakout season. And honestly, everybody should be looking at him in fantasy for next year. But Kyle Pitts should, and if he's not, it's to really start to get worried. He should be a top 5 tight end in fantasy next year. And I know you say that every year, but this is the year where he actually has a quarterback who can throw for more than 2,000 yards in a season.
No, I agree with you. I think value-wise, you're going to want the tight end because of the scarcity there. But ultimately, I think Drake London has a bigger season, and that's the player you really want to think about adding. He probably jumps the most in number of rounds. And Kyle Pitts is still going to have – I mean, they're both going to still have trust issues for people, because you just haven't seen it yet. I doubt Kirk Cousins will play in the preseason, so that's another thing. You won't really get to see them play together.
Is he confirmed to be ready for week 1?
I haven't seen anything either way, but I would assume. When did he get hurt? Was it about halfway?
It was about halfway through the season.
8?
Yeah,
I think he's going to be ready for week 1. I think the reports have seemed to indicate.
So
that.
it said, I'm reading now. It says apparently his recovery is reportedly ahead of schedule. He hurt himself week 8, October 29th. So you can hope that. I mean, he underwent surgery November 1st. So I guess you can hope that.
There you go. That's quick.
2 days later. Imagine if us low lifes could have had that. But I think so that 8 to 10. 10 months brings you to September the following year. So 10 months to recover from that. I don't know if he's doing whatever Aaron Rodgers is doing.
I was about to say Aaron Rodgers did it in 4.
Yeah. So
did he? Did he?
No.
We never saw him on the field, so we don't know what he really did. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he'll be back for week 1. I just don't think there's any reason that they need to play him in the preseason. So you're not going to see him when you're drafting, to determine what to do with these guys. So you're going to have to kind of see what you like there. So, all right, next week, just really quickly, next week is the 3rd annual March Madness Community Bracket Pick'em. So we're going to start Pass the Rock at 7 Eastern instead of what we've been doing in the afternoon. So that's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of new prizes. We have a sponsor. The whole thing is going to be insane. Jack, Are you going to be able to join us, or is it going to be too late in España?
Oh, it's going to be very late in España, but I would not miss a March Madness bracket pick'em for the world. So I'm going to do my absolute best to be there.
Officially a sicko, and but it's going to be great. You got if you have not watched college basketball yet, this is the week to start watching. Okay, it's the tournament, the conference tournaments. You get to kind of get a feel for some people before you pick your bracket next weekend. Jesse, we will have our bracket pick 'em up and loaded and ready to go in our Discord, right?
Oh yeah, and I always love to get on here, get on Twitch for 2 hours and just talk about stuff that I have literally no idea on, and just make my pick based on if the mascot's name is funny or whoever's named Colgate. So
we do like the Colgate joke every year. Hopefully they can make the round
never
of
gets
68.
old. Yeah.
So that we have more Colgate jokes. If not, you're going to have to hope that Brown wins the Ivy League or something else interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Princeton's actually good this year, though. Princeton, they went on a run last year, and I think they were ranked. Andy Katz did his Power 36 that he always did, and I think they cracked it. So, good team.
I just need my Creighton Blue Jays, and that's all.
Oh, go Creighton. All right.
See, I know something.
From Omaha, Nebraska, actually, just so you know. All right. So awesome. Thanks, guys. NFL free agency will continue through this week. We're going to talk on Thursday some more. Maybe we'll have a little breakdown at the beginning of what's been going on. We're definitely going to have a free agency draft and a bunch of trivia and other games. So check that out. And Jack, just so you know, I was always ready.